Hi there, my name is Ryan Rumsey, and a couple times a week I sit down, record myself talking about design leadership stuff that comes up or questions that people are asking me, and that's what these videos are all about. Today's question is another one I really like. It's one I get a lot too. The question is, how can a design leader, somebody who's more on that leadership path, maybe in management or the executive path, how can they differentiate themselves in a very competitive job market? Before I kind of get into it, first thing I want to say is that if you need a job to have your basic needs met, that is a very different situation than somebody who's looking to meet more than their basic needs. It's a very convenient if you have the affordance to kind of pick the job you want and look to get more than your basic needs met. That being said, let's go. So one of the things that I've seen throughout my career, I've done lots of hiring throughout my career. I've hired, people managers. I've been on the other end. And one of the things that I see a lot of is the same story. We see this a lot in sort of the individual contributor path of people kind of having the same resumes and portfolios. And there's a lot of guidance there to kind of help. But that is even more so when you talk about leadership portfolios, leadership interviews, those leadership stories, if you will, because leadership is much about soft skills, and it's really hard to kind of differentiate those soft skills. But the same story that I see over and over again is kind of like, here's my resume of skills and capabilities. Here's a story of why the company needed design. Here's some stories of what our customers needed. And here's a story of our process. And so there's this kind of a story that shows up in the same way, but I think there's this other part of the story that results in a lot of people sharing the same type. And this industry guidance we get, it kind of tells us to tell this more narrative, inspirational story. And a lot of times we're getting that guidance from people who have never had your job or your responsibilities or been in your situations. And so as a result, some of the patterns that I've seen is there's really people struggle to have a strongly held position on what is unique about them and what value they individually bring, what strengths they individually bring to an organization. There's a kind of an over-reliance on soft language, not a lot of direct language. Obviously, people of different backgrounds have the benefit of doubt when using more direct language. But some of the things that I see a lot of are a lack of situational context behind decision making. And if you're a hiring manager, if you are a leader, if you're an executive, you have a business problem to solve, you want to see that context of why somebody made a decision. And flip that around a lot, I see a lot of sort of a lack of direct sales pitch of sort of from somebody interviewing for a job that is really putting out this pitch that I'm the person you need to do that. And as a result, I think what we then see are lots of people who are interviewing that are unclear on really also talking about their own personal expectations and what they need. And so there's this generally kind of a lack of a strategic approach. The results of that is like if you interview 50 people, 49 kind of have the same story. And none of those stories tell deliberately why you did something. And when everybody kind of looks the same on paper in interviews, that's where systematic bias takes root, where a lot of those who have already have the benefits of that advantage, they continue to get that advantage. And we then see a lot of people's confidence going down as a result. So I think there's many different ways that we can kind of help with our positioning, but a very practical one that I think we can take away from this quick video is to talk about the story that you talk about. And so one of the ways that I think works really well is to acknowledge that the job hiring process is a decision-making meeting. And the inspirational sort of narrative format is not great for decision-making meetings. Instead, I think we can use a combination of analytical and narrative story formats. And so there's this one great structure that comes from the consulting world. It's called the pyramid principle that we can adapt and remix to kind of help frame our story in a slightly different way. It's called situation, complication, resolution, result. And it really frames these questions of like, what's the situation or challenge that you were hired to address in a previous role? What were the complications that you faced in that role? Things that were getting in the way of you doing a good job? What was your resolution to do an excellent job despite those complications? And then what were the results of your effort? And so a quick example might be something like, here was the situation. I was hired to scale an existing design team. The first complication is I was hired on January 13th, 13 days after the fiscal year started. So all budget and headcount were already decided. I didn't really have a lot of leverage for my first year to grow the team. The second complication is, unbeknownst to me, that I was hired into an organization that was looking to reduce year-on-year costs by 8%. So surprise, you're here to grow this organization and we have to reduce costs. The third complication might be something like I inherited a team of designers from somebody else who was fired. And so the team that I inherited, they all kind of have their different understandings, various understandings of what happened, and they're kind of feeling a little uncertain in their own future as well. We can then move to the resolution, and this is where that narrative style of really showing that narrative story, the story that we often show with a lot of imagery and inspiration, this is where we can fit that in and sort of say, here's how I took responsibility. These are the activities that we did. Here's what how we approached it. And then the last one is to say, here are the results. As a result of doing this work, user engagement went up by 23%. Satisfaction improved. Employee satisfaction improved. We met our year-on-year operational cost goals. Things like that. So really, I think one of the clear ways that design leaders can separate themselves, differentiate themselves, is to really tell this different story of what were the situations that you faced, what were the complications that were getting you in the way, what was your resolution to succeed anyway? And what were the results of doing that hard work? Cool.